Hey, I just wanted to, jump on here real quick. I've been reading the print proof of my book, which is coming out in October, and I wanted to read a little bit of the introduction for you guys so that you get a bit of an idea of what it's about. So here goes. First things first. 10 years ago, on the 1st of July 2012, so a little bit more than 10 years ago now, I left a letter and a set of house keys on a kitchen table and changed the course of my life completely. It was the moment I decided that my past didn't have to define my future. It is not that on the 2nd of July 2012 I had it all figured out or never reacted habitually again or ceased to misinterpret things based on my previous experiences. Of course not. I did wake up, though, to new potential, space to work through my trauma and rediscover who I really was underneath it all. Just over a year after that, on the 29th of September 2013, I became one of the founding members of Swan Waters, an online gathering place for ugly ducklings like myself, who had decided they were ready to grow their swan wings. I spent the following 6 years running and writing for this amazing platform, supporting amazing women who were ready, like me, to step away from their emotional abusers. This platform was my outlet, the companion on my healing journey, the breeding ground for amazing friendships, and my absolute passion. But as I healed, I started to realize it was harder to get to work on it. It became harder to reach back and remember what it had felt like to be stuck. I realized that I'd managed to unstick myself, and I was ready to let go of the ugly duckling and embrace the swan I had become. It took a while to figure all of this out and figure out what I wanted to do with the resources I had created over the years. It finally became clear that I wanted to share my writing with the world, but in a way that didn't require me to engage with my trauma on a daily basis. So, here it is, my journey from ugly duckling to cygnet to swan. I know I am being deliberately obtuse here, and I hope you'll forgive me, but I don't want to give too much of the story away without establishing some understanding between us about what you're about to read. This is not just a collection of blog posts and tips on how to overcome emotional abuse. There is a lot of that, and there is also a lot of my own story and experiences here. Of course, no personal story is completely objective. I will be the first to say that the way we tell our stories is highly subject to interpretation. Who we were at the time our memories were made and who we are now as we look back on them are vastly different. And this is without yet taking into consideration that each story is remembered differently by different people due to the reality of perspective and perceived truth. You may notice the difference between articles I wrote early on in my journey and those I wrote later. You may see how my understanding of my own stories, the effects of my childhood experiences, and the healing tools that I describe shift. Some parts may resonate with you and some may not. And that may well be because your understanding of your experiences will also be changing. You may be early on in your journey and feel connected to the parts of this book that I wrote when I was feeling raw and angry. You may have traveled for a while and find resonance with the more considered and nuanced articles I wrote later on. Feel free to skip what doesn't feel right for you today. You can always go back to it tomorrow or next year. There is no linear story here. You can dip in and out as you go along. You can look up parts that line up with your personal journey. Allow your intuition to guide you to the parts of the book that you need today. My aim in writing for Swan Waters and for publishing this book is not to simply recount the way my family functioned, or rather didn't function, with the hope that people will read it and feel sorry for me. That is not what I'm about at all. I am sharing these moments and memories with you because chances are you've been through similar things. And maybe you need to feel like you aren't alone in your experience of emotional abuse. But I'm also putting pen to paper with the hope that whoever reads this will find hope to overcome the damage of abuse, heal, and rebuild their lives. In Swan Waters, we always talked about life beyond toxic relationships. This is to say that while it is important to label abuse for what it is, what is equally important is to remember that the abuse does not define us. That we are indeed capable of finding the kind of life we want beyond the pain of the past. My account of the emotional abuse I experienced from my family of origins is what happened as filtered through my mind, body, and soul. I don't know exactly why my family behaved the way they did. Was it their own trauma, their mental or physical health? I guess it doesn't even really matter. If it was because of the way their negative experiences shaped them, I genuinely feel empathy for that. And I can forgive them for their inability to face the pain in their souls in order to heal. It takes courage to do so. Courage that some people don't have the ability to muster up for various reasons. And I can't hold that against anyone. I mean, those among us who have undertaken healing work know that it is a hard and sometimes dark journey to the other side. Having said that, I had to make a choice. Do I continue to allow myself to suffer at their hands because of their suffering? Or do I choose to value myself enough to no longer allow them to hurt me because they are hurting? I touch upon the why question sometimes, but it can't always be answered because people like my parents have a logic that belongs to them alone. Those of us who want to have healthy minds and relationships can't understand the way they work. If we could, there would be something wrong with us too. So I consider the fact that I can't answer all the why questions a compliment to my willingness to take charge of my own life, commit to healing, and be responsible for me. I can't answer the questions that my parents needed to be asking of themselves. This story has not been written to name and shame. In fact, other than my name, which I changed years ago, I decided only to refer to the people in these stories in terms of their relationship to me. It isn't important who they are, but rather the complicated nature of our bonds and relationships. I simply want to raise awareness about emotional abuse and create a kind of roadmap for people who are looking for a way to get themselves free from the same thing. Perhaps you'll be astounded and confused because you've never ever encountered the toxic dynamic and effects of an emotionally abusive family. Maybe you recognize your own upbringing, in which case I hope you will feel the connection between survivors, which of course means that you are not alone. You may at times wonder why, as an adult, I would go back to my abusive family for advice, or why I would tell them about my life knowing that they were emotionally dangerous people. You'll probably feel like you're watching a bad horror movie, and you want to shout at the main character not to look behind the curtain because that is where the axe murderer is hiding. Well, here's the thing. Much of what I'm sharing is reflective. When I was still in contact with my family, I didn't understand the depth of how I was being manipulated. So being in the middle of it made it hard for me to see the situation for what it was. And sure, I knew there were tensions and arguments. I knew we complained a lot, but don't all families do that? In other words, as abnormal as my family was, it was my normal. Not until I stepped back and looked again did I see the abuse for what it was. I was then able to unravel the gaslighting that kept me trapped in a family bound, by toxic and traumatizing emotional abuse. This is the introduction to my book, The Ugly Duckling Diary, which this is the print proof. It's coming out on the 1st of October, and I will be talking about it a lot more in the coming weeks, obviously. So I hope you will join me on this journey of getting this book out to you guys.